Living Waters presents On the Box.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday edition of On the Box. Mark, what are you working on today?
Plane tickets for Ray and Easy. They're going to be heading out to the San Antonio Film Festival. At one time, it was just going to be Eddie representing 180, but there's been a change of events, so they're heading out that way. And that's the latest thing I'm working on right before I ran down here.
Is Eddie still going? Is he
Yeah,
going
Eddie's still going to go and be a part. And as the producer, he's going to talk about after 180 Films. I think it's at 2:30 on that Saturday, the 25th-ish of February.
And we are a semifinalist in our particular category, is it? Or finalist? Or what are we?
Yeah, we are a semifinalist. A finalist, I guess, is what you can say, in the documentary category for the San Antonio Film Festival. It's a very big honor, I guess. There's some really big and great shows and documentaries that are being represented there. So we'll see what the Lord does.
Cool. What are you up to today?
I'm working on the 180 conference.
180 conference!
Yep.
Website.
Yep. Designs approved or building.
Are there scholarships available for the 180 conference?
Well, are we doing dueling banjos? Or we're live from Appalachia
is that going out?
On the Box. What are you doing?
I didn't plan that.
That wasn't even a cute funniness at all.
I thought it was.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Good job, Danny.
Hey, way to go, Danny. Thank you for the special effects. All right.
Next.
So the 180 conference website, what are you doing?
Well,
We only have 27 minutes and 30 seconds. I think I'll cue the funniness from now on.
I'm just putting it together. We're taking all the information we have for the speakers and the topics and the purpose of the conference and build it into a website where people have access to the information and can register.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're hoping to have the site up and registrations going by the end of this month sometime.
Yeah, March 1st is the goal.
Thereabouts, yeah. And if you're wondering what we're talking about, it is the 180 conference, which is scheduled for October 20th of this year. Calvary Chapel San Diego will be hosting the event. In addition to those of us here in leadership at Living Waters, we will have Randy Alcorn, Sean McDowell, the Duggars, the Duggars as well, and Pam Tebow will be with us as well. And it's going to be from about 8 to 6, I think. We'll break for lunch. We're going to be packing in quite a bit of teaching in a one-day conference. So be looking for the website. The website is 180prolife.com, 180prolife.com. It's not there yet, but it'll be coming soon within the next couple of weeks or so. All right. Brad, I know you've been anxious to get to our first question.
Actually,
anxious.
There's some questions that are just, so many ways to answer it that it makes it hard to give one answer. But
really?
Well, yeah, because, my thoughts are swimming on this because, there's a lot of ways to look at it. But go ahead. I don't want to.
Well, as the father of 3 daughters, you have
4.
A brood of daughters as well, and a son. Yes. Thinking of my 3 daughters and thinking of this first question, my answer is simple.
Yeah.
So here's the question. Is kissing before marriage a sin if lust is not, all caps, involved? My dad said that you, quote-unquote, kill the blessings from God for the future wife and family you are going to have. Is it true? Thank you.
I feel like I'm about to have a sex talk with my children.
Don't look at me.
Well, theoretically speaking. We're supposed to conduct ourselves in a way that's holy and honorable. Yeah. And, this is a measure by which we live and how we interact with those that are believers. When we're courting somebody, that doesn't make them our spouse yet. In fact, I would say you should treat that person as if they're not, because they may be somebody else's spouse someday. And I wouldn't want my wife to engage in any kind of way that wasn't holy and honorable with anyone that wasn't me. And thus, I wouldn't want the person courting the other person to treat what could be somebody else's future spouse in that same way. So I would say there are reasons why you shouldn't kiss before marriage. It's to say whether it's sin or not. He makes the point that if it's lust, not involved, well, I don't know how you can make that determination for the other person He may be able to say for himself, which I think is
I don't
probably
think he
doubtful.
Can. I don't think he can.
But he can't make that guarantee for the other person for certain. And I think he's in danger, at the very least, of tempting the other person to fall into sin.
Now, you mentioned a word several times, and that is courting. I think
Yeah.
that's a word that's foreign to many Christians, and certainly those outside the body of Christ. What do you mean by that?
Basketball.
Well, I think it's
It's more than basketball.
I think it's a relationship with the intention of marriage. That people try to use dating as if they're trying to find that person to marry. But I think when we engage in a relationship, it should be whether you could see yourself as somebody that this would be someone you would marry.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think you'd be wasting your time.
Dating, as it's most commonly practiced
Right.
by Christians and non-Christians alike, is merely practice for divorce. Try someone on for size for a little while. When that person doesn't feel good anymore, you cast that person aside and you go on to another dating relationship. Mark, what do you think about this question?
Boy, somebody mentioned inside the chat room there's a good book by Joshua Harris, Boy Meets Girl.
Yeah, that is a
now,
good
I
book.
love Joshua Harris, and I haven't read that book, but I would imagine the book is going to be good based upon the author. So if you are needing more advice, I might suggest you heading up that way, even though I haven't read it yet. I think Brad makes an interesting point here, that you are potentially kissing somebody else's wife. Well, there's a good chance that this might become my wife. Well, let me ask you this. All right, so if you don't see anything wrong with kissing, would you be okay if your wife was kissing somebody else inside of a parked car, perhaps some other place? But there's no lust involved. They're just kissing. They're just playing tonsil hockey, right? So would that be okay at that point if your wife were to engage in that activity? I would say no, you would not be too hip or excited to do that unless you're some sort of a secular actor who doesn't care because you yourself are engaging in those acts. You need to be very, very careful. I remember I had a friend right before I went around the U.S. for about a month and a half before I had gotten married, and he was convinced his girlfriend had broken up with him right before we went on this trip. And he was convinced that this woman was going to be his wife. Well, now this girl, his ex-girlfriend, is dating our third roommate that we had. So our third best friend, our third amigo here, is now seeing his ex-girlfriend. And I remember going up to him and saying, hey, you need to be very careful because our buddy is still convinced that that's going to be his future wife. Be very careful what you do. And he goes, oh, no, she's mine. We're the ones that are going to be getting married. Well, needless to say, they didn't get married, but my friend, who I did go around the U.S. with, ended up getting back together with his ex-girlfriend, and they did get married, and they have like 5 beautiful kids now to this day. You need to be very careful what happens. 1 Corinthians 7 says, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. We need to be very careful in what we do and how we approach this whole dating situation. The moment you realize that the person you're with is not going to be your spouse, you need to sever ties with that individual in that manner. Be very careful. God doesn't mess around, and you need to be careful if you're messing around with God's children. He doesn't take it lightly. So I would say stay away from that realm when it comes to kissing, when it comes to anything else. And just have a relationship that is very wholesome. I know a lot of couples that are waiting until they say I do before they actually kiss their spouse on that day, the very first kiss in front of everybody, and God will honor that. There's no need to awaken that lust before you should. Don't awaken that love.
And one thing I noticed, at the end of the ceremony when vows have been made, the pastor says, you may now kiss your bride.
Yeah. In fact, the first wedding I ever officiated was the wedding of a young couple that was attending my church, and they had a courtship relationship, and their first kiss was at the altar.
Yeah. It's a gift, and God has a proper context for his gifts.
Well, we hope Mark. Mark's still here. I'm seeing bodies moving over here. I'm watching bodies move out of the corner of my eye, and being a former law enforcement professional.
Crawling is suspicious.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm supposed to be looking at the camera, but there's movement over here. And I want to track it down. All right. One more thing. If lust is not involved, to the person who sent this email, knock it off. Who are you trying to kid? You're not kidding anyone else. You're only kidding yourself if you think you're going to have that type of intimacy with a woman or with a girl and not have sexual thoughts in your mind.
He may begin with the intention of not entering into lust, but at what point does lust enter in a romantic intimacy?
Yeah. All right. Mark, the Bible is fiction. How do you respond to that claim?
I would say, how do you know? How do you know that it's fiction? Where do you get your information from? Could you be wrong? And put the burden back on them. When they say that it's fiction, they're pulling from some sort of a reserve. They're comparing it to something. Undoubtedly, they're saying, well, because the Bible has miracles inside there, so therefore it's fiction, because we know that miracles don't happen today. And usually this is something that'll come from somebody who is an atheist or a free thinker, a skeptic, they like to call themselves. They're skeptical of all things. Let me tell you, I am skeptical of all things outside of the Bible. But how do you know the Bible is a fictional work? Is it possible that the omnipotent creator of the world, this transcendent being, can perform miracles? He can manipulate matter because he's the creator of matter. Can God do that? Well, if that's possible, well, then God can do whatever he wants. What part of it is fiction? Is all of it fiction? Or can you pick and choose to say what is fiction? See, the burden of proof lies upon you, but the naturalistic mind cannot receive the things of God. So I can get into this debate, this argument with them until I'm blue in the face, and it's not going to get anywhere. Yep. The Spirit of God needs to quicken their heart. So I would begin to challenge their worldview and see where it goes from there.
Now, Mark, isn't someone claiming that the Bible is fiction? Isn't that just doublespeak for I don't believe the Bible?
Well, I think what they're obviously trying to do is just discount the Bible so that they can live whatever way they want to live.
Yeah.
You see, we don't want there to be a God so we can have our own moral code, do what we want to do, and say what we want to say. So in order for you to say, hey, the Bible's not true, what you're really saying is God is not real. I don't trust God. I don't trust the promises of God, the Word of God, or what he's telling me to do, or the plan that he has for my life. I don't want God to speak into my life. So yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what is happening here. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Brad?
I thought he was pretty thorough. And,
I thought so too.
Yeah, so I don't want to taint that. So
no tainting here. No.
Anyone else hear that?
We're going to have a meeting after the show today, I think. All right. We got a video to share with you. We continue to get positive comments about the show lately that we've been sharing. Videos of open air preaching and other things. And so we're going to do that today. Recently, Mike Stockwell of Cross Country Evangelism. Most recently, he went out with us in Indianapolis.
Yeah,
we showed some of his video. I think, have we shown any of Mike's open airs?
No, not on the show.
Oh, okay. Well, you're going to get to see Mike open air in this one. About a week before going to frigid Indianapolis, he was down in balmy Jamaica with a dozen or so people, proclaiming the gospel in a very, very spiritually dark part of the world. And here's a montage, a synopsis of what they did down there in Jamaica.
I tell you the truth, that Jesus Christ is who he said he was, and that there is a hell. The Bible says this: but the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, murderers, whoremongers, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars will have their part in the lake of fire. Why would you perish in your sins today? God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked would turn from their sins. Turn away from your wickedness and turn to Christ before it's too late. Are you being deceived today, my friend? Are you living in deception? Are you living for the things of the world? Or are you living for the things of God?
Friends, it's your heart that God sees. It's your heart that God sees. The Bible says our heart is deceitfully wicked. We were born with a heart that's loving sin. We were born in a heart that loves the world and loves everything in the world and wants to act like the world. And women want to dress like the world and look like the world. And men want to do everything the world does. That's the nature we're born with. And so Jesus Christ said, you must be born again. You were born once in the flesh, loving sin. Jesus Christ said you must be born a second time, born of the Spirit.
You can be sincere. You can think you're on the right road, but you can be sincerely wrong. There's only one way. It's through Christ and Christ alone. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come to the Father but by me. No other way. all went to the cross today. He became sin for us. And on that cross, the wrath of God that should have struck and fell upon you, fell upon Jesus Christ so you could be free. But you must be born again. You must be born again.
In the book of Ecclesiastes, he said, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. For this is the whole duty of man, to fear God and keep his commandments. And this is where it gets absolutely frightening, because he goes on, he says, because God will bring into account every deed, every secret work, whether it be good or whether it be evil. You hear that, friends? Every secret thing that you've done, everything you've done that you think you've gotten away with, is going to be called into account on the day of judgment.
For indeed, we have had the good news preached to us, just as they also. But the word they heard did not profit them, because it was not united by faith in those who heard. So if you've heard the gospel, was it united with faith?
God demonstrated his love, that while we were yet sinners, while we were God's enemy, Christ died for us.
The Bible says he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him. And the Bible says that it pleased the Father to crush his Son. That's what happened on that cross. When the sky became dark, that the Father crushed his very Son so sinners could go away free. For the Word of God says God demonstrated his love toward us while we were sinners. Christ died for us, and he gave up his last breath, and he said, it is finished. It is finished. The penalty was paid on the stripes of Christ Jesus. He paid the ransom so sinners could go away free. The mediator between God and man, the man, Christ Jesus, who gave his life as a ransom.
You need to know tonight that everyone who names the name of the Lord must depart from wickedness. And there is no salvation without repentance, without the turning from sin.
Because that very sin that you boast in is the very thing that will condemn you. The very thing that will condemn you. You don't realize that the thing that you love and the thing that you're holding on to is the thing that's going to destroy you. Because the wages of sin is death.
Whoever you serve, you're a slave to. If you're serving sin, you're a slave to your sin. There's pleasure in sin for a season, but the end thereof is death.
All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But the good news is that Christ Jesus, while we were yet sinners, died for the ungodly. You ever met anybody that was ungodly?
He overcame death and hell. He rose the third day victoriously over the grave. He showed himself to many witnesses, and then he ascended to the highest place, where he took his seat at the right hand of the Father.
He who believes in his Son has life. He who does not believe in his Son does not have life. The wrath of God abides on you. The very wrath of God, that's what we rightfully deserve. Yet God has made a way for us to escape the penalty of our sin. That way is through his Son, Jesus Christ, by his shed blood on Calvary. See, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me.
All right, that's crosscountryevangelism.com, crosscountryevangelism.com. We love what Mike's doing to spread the gospel around the world. All right, now, while you were all watching the video, and we were too, I was made aware of the joke going on in the chat room. And so the Spanish music you were hearing, that stuff, which no longer bugs me.
Kind of does. I can see it. You're turning red. I'm feeling like some chips and salsa.
It was in reference to the email we read yesterday to Ron being the Mexican Brad of the show.
I didn't get it, but I still thought it was funny. So
you didn't get the joke, or you didn't
I
get
didn't
the music?
know what the joke was, but I still thought it was funny.
Oh, yeah.
I was just glad it wasn't in my head.
All right, and since we were doing some arguing during that video amongst ourselves, we'll take the next question. Do you think that we should argue with everyone all the time, Brad?
I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand that question. I mean, what kind of argue are they talking about? Like,
just take it at its face.
Like, well, I mean,
no. Just go ahead. What do you have to say?
Well, if they're talking about just presenting evidence and reasons, to persuade, then I say argue with as many people as you can, But all the time, it sounds like they have like this idea that it's an aggressive quarrel that's going on when we're out witnessing or preaching. And
some people might look at biblical evangelism as we do it and teach it as doing that, just going around and arguing with people.
Well, when anyone presents the truth, there's going to be an opposition to that.
There should be.
And
if you're talking to a lost person,
when you're trying to persuade, you're correcting and informing, and our position will come off like an argument when I don't know how else you could persuade someone without presenting the truth, even though they oppose it.
Yeah. Mark?
I think we need to contend earnestly for the faith. If you're inside of a situation where whatever their worldview is begins to go up against Christianity and you have the opportunity to speak up, I think you need to be able to speak up. So you should speak up. Now, here's the thing. I get into discussions with a lot of family members, with a lot of friends and people out on the street that want to debate the different nuances of their worldview. I don't head that way. I don't go down rabbit trails. So if somebody wants to argue concerning transubstantiation, I'm not going to get into that argument. Not because I don't have an opinion on it. If you want to sit down and discuss that, I can do that. But I'm going to stick within that realm of salvation, soteriology. What does a man need to do to avoid hell and get to heaven, if anything? How do you get to heaven? Does anybody go there? Can everybody get there? Let's discuss that. If you want to go on a little rabbit trail and talk about magical undergarments that an elder Mormon's going to wear, or if you want to talk about a Jehovah's Witness going door to door, is that necessary? I don't go there. It's unnecessary. It's endless babble. It's ramblings on that needs to stop. So, no, we don't always need to argue, but you need to contend for the faith, and you need to stick within the realm of salvation, especially if they're a non-believer. Why? Because they are spiritually in darkness. They won't understand those things anyways, and you come across as a quack already. Let's stick within the realm that's important. So.
Before the Lord opened my eyes to the biblical use of the law and a biblical presentation of the gospel, I was arguing with people all the time, and I argued several people into heaven, never to see them come to church, never to see them bear any kind of spiritual fruit. And all I did is I won the argument, but the person never came to repentance and faith. We're never going to argue anyone into heaven. The slickest apologetic argument will not win a single soul. It's the gospel that is the power of God to salvation.
Yep. And of course, I don't know that argue necessarily means that things are always agreeable. In that, I think anytime we present our position, that's an argument, whether if someone opposes it or not. Ultimately, our hope is that they'll take the instruction and they'll appropriate it through repenting and putting their trust in through. I'm all babble all of a sudden. Repenting and putting their faith in Christ.
Yeah. And another important thing to remember, too, is that if you're in a conversation and it turns into an argument and you're not getting anywhere with the person in front of you, at some point you're going to need to dust off your feet and move on. Not in a disrespectful way, in a kind and polite way. But, if the person you're talking to is blaspheming God, trampling under feet the blood of Christ, no gospel for them. Don't cast your pearls before swine. And that's in a one-to-one setting. I got a comment on one of the YouTube videos of us open air preaching out in Indianapolis that said, we shouldn't be casting our pearls before swine. So, well, the fact that 2 or 3 people are, acting like swine doesn't mean the other 10, 15,000 people that can hear the sound of our voice doesn't mean that there's not some within that large crowd who are hearing the gospel, repenting, and and believing. So,
well, and we also should be mindful of our tone. Sometimes
sure, yeah.
Things can be misunderstood as an argument when our tone is not one of compassion.
Very true. Very true. Has the amount of good open-air preaching increased over the last 5 to 10 years? If so, a lot or a little? Or does it just seem that way to me since I'm just now learning about it? Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, I think because you see some YouTube videos of people that are open air preaching, it encouraged you to do it, that, hey, I can do this. If that person can do it and I can say what that person's saying, I'm going to be encouraged to do it myself. So I think we are seeing an influx of people open air preaching. And because of the internet and things of that sort, we can hone in on our message. We can fine tune it. We can perfect it. We can just simply ask our friends, hey, what was I lacking in that? Or what am I missing? What do I need to do? We can videotape ourselves and we can fine tune it. So because of technology increasing with, something like every 4 months, every 6 months, technology begins to multiply or double.
Wow.
I think that's amazing. What do? Yeah. We open air preach better because we see other people open air preaching and we can take notes, and we have so much great teaching now available at our fingertips because we can, within a moment's notice, see what Paul Washer or John MacArthur said on Sunday morning. We can grab a hold of those little fine tunes, grab a hold of it, put it inside of our message, and then let the world know it, a la Whitfield on the corner of wherever you're going to be preaching from. So I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And, the Lord has used this ministry here at Living Waters to raise up an untold number of folks who are out there, not just open air preaching, but engaging people in conversation, distributing tracts. A lot of other ministries have been birthed as a result of people who've watched the Way of the Master television show or the Living Waters University videos. So I think there is a lot more, certainly that we're aware of, but I think there is a lot more good open air preaching out there. But with that, there's quite a bit of bad open-air preaching out there, too.
Yeah, I definitely think there's probably been an increase. Although, I think it's like buying a certain kind of car. You start to notice it a little bit more on the road when it matches the one you get. So if you're involved in open-air preaching, you start to notice them all the time.
It never failed. When we got an APB or something on the radio looking for a particular kind of car, that just did an armed robbery or a burglary or something like that, for the next several minutes, you set up a post on the freeway or whatever, waiting. For the next several minutes, it's that car and that color that you see constantly, as if they were the only car on the road.
Well, and once I was more involved in, taking to the streets to preach the gospel, I started becoming more aware of the past, the history of open-air preaching, and saw, unknown to me, that there was many men who had already gone forth to preach the gospel in the streets, and I just didn't know about them. But now that, that I see myself involved in that type of ministry, I notice it a lot more. I don't know that it necessarily means an increase, but probably there has been, but at the very least, I'm more aware of it.
All right. Okay, hey, we are out of time. We want to thank you for joining us today. Till tomorrow, be encouraged, strengthened, and unafraid. Proclaim the gospel. Ah-ha!
You're full of it! Living Waters presents On the Box.